then lost in Stillwater. So, Dave Aranda earlier today, they were up 28-3. They ended up all of a sudden looking up 28-23, and they had to drive the length of the field to put the game away, and Richard Reese had a lot to do with that. And he was talking about his team yet again, that sometimes can be Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
I felt, where you look at that first half and that third quarter in particular, you have our team, and you could see kind of what we could become and then maybe what we've been. And I think in all of it, it's our choice, It's a choice we have to make. And I think, it starts like today. I think attending class, I think taking notes, I think, being on time for your learning specialist, all of those things. I think, the hard choices that you can make consistently put you in a position for easier things down the road. I think the easier your choices are.
So, I'm going to say this. He brought up some things that even weren't football related. And he's kind of talked about this team at times maybe being a little bit immature. And you wonder if they're still fighting with that. It's a little bit late to be dealing with that in the season, in my opinion.
I think there's some major chemistry issues. I think there is a player on this team, I don't know if you saw it, who we're a big fan of. Jackson Player had a little tweet after the game on Saturday that was kind of one of those that you go like, is everything okay here? Like, it was just a little off comment that you kind of get when things aren't going exactly the way that people want them to be going. So that, to me, was just red flag, and especially after a win, an even bigger red flag. And I think just like that kind of, to me, was just like, all that stuff I've been kind of wondering about and feeling about, not in particular with one player, but in general, I do think that's there. I think it's very clear that it's there. I think it's obvious that it's there. To what degree, how rampant, what have you, I don't know. But I think there's very clearly some chemistry issues here, guys, in some areas. But yeah, that's not helping matters. And I think that's why, he's talked about those things right there, talking about just going to classes and doing, study work, and He's mentioned that off and on at various times as well. It hasn't always been on the field. So, yeah, I think in comparison to when you had guys that you probably didn't have to worry about as much, your Jalen Petries and your Terrell Bernards, who kind of just knew the deal and knew the grind and knew what it took, you didn't have to probably worry about that as much. But I think with this team, it's a constant struggle every single week, and it's something that's just always there, and they're always battling, and it shows up on Saturdays to some extent, and that's why this team – entering the month of November practically at this point is pretty much kind of the same that they've been along the way, as far as just being very helter-skelter, very herky-jerky in some ways, and not being that smooth operating machine that we kind of got used to watching last year.
Two of their losses are to two teams that are now under 500. West Virginia and Brigham Young's gone into a free fall.
We didn't talk about West Virginia, our little Big 12 wrap, but my goodness, that was
a
hey,
Texas
folks,
Tech, yeah.
West Virginia fans out there, I've said plenty of times, like, hey, I'm a fan of Neil Brown, but yeah, I'm kind of starting to be.
You said this after the Baylor game, that you wonder if that win may have been, in a lot of ways, it may delay the inevitable.
Yes, I did.
Yeah,
I thought that was a win that, and I think even a lot of West Virginia fans probably on the chat room probably agreed with me, and that, like, yeah, you're like, boom, West Virginia won, what a great win. But if you really looked at that win, you go, that was a horrific Baylor loss, is what that was. More than it was a great West Virginia win. I think that's not me looking at green and gold. I think that's just watching a football game and seeing, like, that team should have won this game, but they made error after error after error, and that's football, and I get that. But, yeah, I think that had they lost – here's the deal. I don't know if that changes them being willing to pay his buyout and get him out of there sooner, but I do think it kind of for a moment made everybody forget of, like, kind of the direction this really was going. And then this weekend was a blunt reminder of, like, this is where it's at right now, and it's not really getting better with Neil Brown, and we kind of have to wonder, and I know West Virginia fans, many have been wondering already for a while of, like, is this going to turn a corner at some point? And Tech did whatever they wanted to against West Virginia, basically.
But back to Baylor for a second. They're the little tiny things that add up. They're not a team that is they've lost 3 games this year, right? So they're 4-3. And none of them have they gotten bludgeoned beyond belief, where it's like, well, clearly there's a talent deficiency between the team that beat them and them. That's not the case that's going on here. There is a detail deficiency, I think, and those are the little things that look. Oklahoma. You know why Oklahoma State won that game against Texas? The details
and culture.
Yeah,
not that Texas is trying to, but Oklahoma State's kind of got that thing in a nice little.
But the coach has been there for nearly 20 years.
But the devil's in the details, right? Yep. And then you've got a coach who's just in his third year, and then you've got a team that's trying to find itself, and there's guys that haven't figured out that that one little extra thing that you do kind of matters in the long run, especially when you're in a conference. And I think that maybe some of the younger guys have not quite realized this, or maybe the whole team. This is a conference where you don't have a gimme, so you can't
not be just the young guys, Paul.
Yeah, maybe all of them.
No,
you just can't just roll out and half-ass your way through it, and then everything's going to turn out okay. And then maybe you forgot that the team last year didn't half-ass anything.
Well, and that's
they went right through.
Yeah, and I want to point out just a couple parts of this game in particular, but you're absolutely right, Paul. And I think that they're probably going to have to graduate some guys to kind of get back to where they want to be, honestly. I don't think they're going to solve chemistry issues in this season. It's just, at this point, you've got 5 games left. How's it really going to change? But there are a couple of different sequences in this game that separate them from being who they are at their best and who they are at their worst. And so they go up 21-3. They force a punt. And what do they turn around and do? They're up 21-3 in the second quarter. Blake Shapen gets intercepted inside the 10-yard line, right? Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You remember Blake Shapen's interception after they forced the punt. So instead of going up, 28-3, 24-3, 2nd and 9, he gets picked off at midfield. They turn around, they get a 3-and-out. So that's great. Hey, overcame the turnover. They go on a 15-play, 99-yard drive. Fantastic. It's 28-3. But then that middle 8 section, Kansas fumbles as they force the fumble, and they turn right around and have a chance to score right before halftime, and another interception after Ben Sims drops the touchdown pass. So instead of going up, 35-3, it's instead 28-3, and that'd be fine, except for they turn around and they fumble after an 11-play drive right out of the gates at halftime. And that's a 14-point swing right there that you could have had, and this game's over. And instead, it absolutely leaves the door wide open for Kansas to suddenly feel like, okay, wait a second. And then boom, that third quarter, and then fourth quarter happens, and Kansas is still in this game. So
you could feel.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, you could feel it, and we're like up in the high level in the press box, but you could feel KU kind of go. Man, this thing's not over.
The interception happened after a surefire touchdown drop. It happened at the 13-yard line of Kansas. The fumble happened at the KU 27.
Yeah,
and those happened back to back. I mean, that's a massive swing.
So one of the things I like to do when I compare, I'm trying to tell teams look at teams where they want to be. Tell teams, they don't listen to me. Look at teams where they want to be. So this is a Baylor team that won the conference last year and was a hair's breadth away, from being in the college football playoff if things, fell a certain way for them, right? So if you want to be a college football playoff team, if you look at the teams that are regularly in the college football playoff, that killer instinct is there even in their bad games. Like look at Georgia this year when they almost lost to Missouri, right? They sleptwalked through the game, but when they took the lead, you know what they did?
They
choked them out.
Yeah, they did.
They just choked them out.
Yeah, you did. And they had a chance to dominate that game. Give Lance Leipold, by the way, in Kansas a lot of credit for getting themselves. The opportunity became they took advantage of it. And my God, 28-23, you go 3 and out. I wouldn't have surprised me if Bean doesn't take Kansas down the field and win the game. Now, there's the Texas Tech staff, Joey McGuire, a lot of others who are on either some of the peripheral staff, some of the support staff, but there's obviously a Texas Tech Baylor flavor, just like Dave Aranda used to be an assistant coach, a GA, and an assistant coach at Texas Tech. And it's an obvious question.
Has a degree from there.
Yeah, he does have his degree. We'll hear from Joey McGuire, and I asked him that same thing. Here is Dave Aranda on Joey McGuire and facing him for the first time as the head coach at Tech.
I have a lot of respect for Joey and a lot of the guys on the staff. And so, and I mean this wholeheartedly. I want them to win. I want them to have success, just not just versus us, but I want to see them successful. I know the type of people they are and what it means to all of them and everything. And so you want them to have their own success, just, not this Saturday.
That's as blunt as he can be, and that, Dave Aranda says it, you believe him. So he discussed Joey McGuire. The game, 6:30 Saturday night, Patrick Mahomes being honored. They'll have a blackout. It makes sense. Texas Tech, of course, had the win earlier this year, a huge win against Texas, and then also got themselves back in position by beating up on West Virginia. So what is Joey